Hey guys, welcome back to another video from the channel Learn from Basics. This is Joe here, and this is our 7th video on the series on this channel, where we learn about one of the fastest growing app development languages called Flutter. So, in our last video, we went through the base code given to us by our Flutter SDK when we said Flutter create, and we were presented with a beautiful native app, which we can show right now by doing Flutter run. It might take some time to load, but on our Android simulator, we got a very beautiful Android or iOS app that has been run by Flutter, and we basically made some changes with our basic common sense knowledge on this code, and we played around with this code, or hopefully you played around with this code. Now this was the app that we had, and now this is just a tip, I guess. So do you see how, as I said, Flutter can also run on the web. Now, sometimes your computer might be low on battery or just might not be fast enough, which means that you don't have the juice to run an emulator. So when you don't have that, but you want to test a mobile app, what you can do is you can deploy the app in on the web. So as you can see right now, my Flutter app has been deployed on the web, and you can see that the web app is not as beautiful as compared to the mobile app, but it's still good. But as you can see, if you want to turn this web app into a mobile simulator, you can right click, inspect, and this only works on Chrome. And then over here, you'll see this. It's like a phone next to a tablet. And after you click on that, when you go to dimensions, you'll see that you have a bunch of options for phone sizes. Like this was the size of the iPhone X. This is kind of like an iPhone X emulator or an iPad Pro emulator or a Galaxy S5 emulator. So let's stick with the iPhone X. So as you can see, it's not the best emulator, but it does have some bugs, like before, how there was a bug I had to reload. But if you're in dire need and you can't run an emulator, this is a good alternative. Just throwing that out. But we learned about how we can change some of these properties over here to change this beautiful base app that we got. Now in today's video, we'll learn about the language at use called Dart. We'll learn the basics about Dart and basically the fundamentals about Dart in this video and probably 2 more videos. And we'll learn more important topics in Dart, or more Dart specific topics, later on in the course as we require them when we're coding our sample apps. But for now, we're just going to go through basic programming knowledge with Dart. And if you know Dart, I would recommend you skip this video because you already know Dart. But if you don't, you can stick around to watch this video. It's not that hard. And if you know languages such as JavaScript or C, this is going to be a breeze. So let's get started by coding in Dart, right? So you might notice that you can't quite code in Dart over here because like you just can't code it in Dart because we have a Flutter project. So even though this says main.dart file, this is kind of like Dart plus Flutter code. So if you want to code in native Dart and none of this Flutter stuff, what you can do is in your search engine of your choice, you can simply type in dartpad.dev. As you can see, that's what I have over here. But if you type in dartpad.dev, you'll get this online code engine or online text editor that allows you to code in Dart. So in today's video, we're going to learn about the basics of Dart, like how you can declare variables, how you can start a Flutter program, how you can do things like print in Dart. And yeah, we're going to learn all of those. And then our next video, we'll go into for loops and if conditions and while loops. And in our third video, we'll go into how to create objects in Dart. So let's start, shall we? Now, Dart is a strictly typed programming language, which means that its syntax, it requires a lot of syntax. Or the syntax is really strict. Like you have to add a semicolon at the end. You have to add a semicolon at the end of each line. So as you can see over here, for example, at the end of this line, you'll see that I have to add a semicolon. And if I don't, you'll see how the program crashes. So you will have to add a semicolon at the end of each line. Remember that. And then the next thing is, whenever you create a variable, you follow the following steps, I guess. So this is how you create a variable. First of all, you write down the data type of the variable. data type of variable, and then you write down the name of the variable equal to value of the variable. Now per se, you just want to declare a variable, right? You don't want to give the variable any data. So whenever you want to do that, you're going to say late data type name. So late data type of the variable and name. So what are these data types, you may ask? Well, data types are basically, it tells the compiler, hey compiler, I'm going to have this type of data in my in this variable. If you don't know what a compiler or interpreter is, or if you're really new to programming, then check out these videos that'll pop up in the cards about right now before you get into this, because well, you'll need to know about data types and what compiler and interpreter are, what the differences between both of them are before you go into Dart. So please check that out and then come back. But what the purpose for data type is it basically tells the compiler, hey compiler, inside this variable, I'm going to hold data that has to do with this data type. Now there are 6 data types. Data types. Now what are these 6 data types, you might be asking? Well, you have int, float, char, string, bool, and long. So let's go through all of these data types, because right now they just sound like random letters that have been stitched together, right? Now int is actually an abbreviated version of the actual name of this data type, which is integer. And now if you are in a higher level of mathematics, you might recognize that an integer is any whole number. So -1, 2, 3, 0, 4, 5, this. Those are all integers. Integers are whole numbers. So if you had 1.23, that would not be an integer, because this is not a whole number, it's a decimal number. So an integer, or an int in programming languages, are basically all whole numbers. Now a float, on the other hand, a float that's not abbreviated. A float is basically any number that exists. Yeah, any rational number that exists. So 3.2 is a float. 1 is a float. 2.34 is a float. 6.28 is a float. 0 is a float. And -0.82 is a float. Now you might be wondering, well, if an int or an integer has many restrictions, such as that it can't be a number with decimal points, and a float doesn't have it, so a float can be any number out there, why do we use integers? Why can't we just use floats, right? Well, that's a great question. And the answer to that has to do with storage. An int takes up less space in your memory than a float does. So that basically means if you use a lot of floats, your app is going to be very slow, because your app is going to require a lot of memory. So you don't have to worry about this, but just remember that you shouldn't always use floats, because that's not good for your app's performance. So if you have a number that has a decimal, then use a float. But if you don't and it's a whole number, then use an int. Now what's a char, you might be asking? Well, a char is short for character. Now you might know what a character is. Now a char is any letter or any number in double quotes or single quotes. So 1 is a char, A is a char, B is a char. But AB is not a char, because you can see there's not one letter or integer, there's 2. So a character or a char is basically it's basically any one single integer or one single alphabet or one single symbol that's in between of double or single quotes. Oops, I got Siri activated over there. But that's what a char is. And then we have string. What's a string? Well, a string is basically a group of characters. It's basically either a word or a sentence that's inside of double quotes. So for example, hi, I am 12 years old. That would be a string, because do you see how this is basically like a list or a combination of multiple chars? For example, H is a char, I is a char, this space over here is a char, the other I is a char, the space is a char, and so on. So a string is basically a combination of multiple characters. Now remember, a, a char can be a string, but a string can't be a char. So for example, this is also a string. So do you see how like a char can be a string, but a string can't be a char? So that's kind of something that you'll have to remember. And then a boolean is basically true or false. So boolean is as simple as true or false. Now, why would we use boolean, you may ask? Well, you'll actually get familiar with this, or you'll identify the use case of booleans later on when we go into for loops and if conditions, because booleans are very important. And last but not least, we have long. So I just put out long, just, so you know what long is. Like maybe, some additional knowledge. But don't worry about long. Long, as the name might suggest, is basically a longer integer. So for example, an integer can only hold up to x place values. I don't remember the place values right about now, but I will do some research after this video and put that. The number should pop up right now. But an integer can only hold x values or x place numbers. So if you go over those place numbers, the integer is going to say, hey, that's too big of a number for me to hold. So I'm going to throw out an error. But a long, on the other hand, can hold very, very, very big numbers. But most of the times you won't use longs, mainly because they take up a lot of storage and they're very inefficient. So long is basically a very long integer, but you don't really have to use it. Just keep it in mind for now, I guess. So those are the 6 data types. So if I wanted to store the age of someone, this is how I would declare it. I would say, first of all, the data type, which would be an int because age is a number and it's a whole number. And then the name of the variable, which would be age, and then the value, so 12, and then end it with a semicolon. Now, in order to print something in Dart or print something to the console, you simply use print, open, close, and then you type in whatever you want to print. So if I wanted to print age, I would print age. So how about we write that code, shall we? So let's just go out of this. And the reason all of this right now there's no errors because I've commented this. So do you see how there's this slash star and slash star? So that's how you comment something in Dart. Everything inside this space of slash and star, I basically commented. So let's write this code for real. So we can say int age equal to 12 and then print age. Now let's run this, shall we? Oof. Remember, you have to add a semicolon. Always gets me. Do you see the error? Do you see where it says no main method found, compilation failed? So what does this mean, you may ask? Well, do you remember when I said that Dart is an object-oriented programming language? Or basically, Dart, also in other words, is based after languages such as C, and it's strictly typed. So what I'm basically trying to say is that in Dart, the compiler is so strict that you have to tell the compiler, hey, whenever I run my program, I want you to run this code. I don't want you to run any other code. I want you to run this code. So you might be wondering, well, how do I tell my compiler that I want to run this code? Well, in order to do that, what you type in is you type in a function called void main, and then you add these circle braces, curly braces, and then you add the code inside these curly braces. So whatever code is inside these curly braces runs. So whatever code is inside the void main function or void inside these curly braces after void main is the code that runs whenever you start your program. So you're telling the computer, hey computer, I want to run this code whenever I click on the run button or whenever I compile my program because, well, it's in the main program. So if I were to write some code outside of here, int age, if I were to say print, this won't print, you'll see there's an error. Why? Well, that's because, So that's because this print is outside of the void main function. So you want all of your code or almost all of your code to be inside the void main function. Now there are some exceptions to this and we'll cover this when we come into functions and objects. But just remember for now that you have to type in void space main and then some curly braces, and you have to put your code inside the curly braces. So now if we run the program, do you see how it runs? So as you can see, it says 12. Now I can change that and make that 13. Voila, it's 13. And I can, if I wanted to store something like text, like I am 13, you can see that there's an error. Why? Well, that's because we said we would store an integer data type inside the variable age, but we're actually storing a string. So we have to change this to string, capital S, and then run it. And you'll see it says I am 13. So that's the basic of Dart, guys. This is basically what void main means. As you can see over here, we have void main, and you can see that there's almost little to no code inside void main. Almost all of the code is outside of void main, right? And I'll explain why that is, and why when we wrote our code outside of void main, our program just crashed. But for now, remember that for Dart, you just say, hey Dart, whatever code is inside void main, that's the code I want you to run whenever we start our program. And then these are all the data types. Go ahead and memorize those data types because they're very important. And also these basic syntax rules. And remember, if you don't know what syntax or compilers are, there's a link to the video I made down in the description, so go ahead and check that out. But that's all for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments to make this series better, put them down in the description. As always, all useful links will be down in the description. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe the video, and also turn on notifications, to be notified whenever I post a new video. That's all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.